Today we're going to continue our unit working with both percents and proportions. Today we're going to be looking at three types of percent questions, and as we do that we're going to set up a proportion which we can then solve. So even though we're going to be looking at three different types of percent questions, they are all using the same formula that you see on the screen. So we're going to be reading the problem, plugging in what we know, solving for the unknown. So again, even though we have a formula, we can plug in different pieces, find one of the missing pieces. So as we look at this formula up on the board, we are going to focus in with these words is and of, rather than having to think about the part and the whole. With the problems that we're going to be working with, we're going to see those words is and of, which makes it easy for us to determine that part and whole. So what you're going to need to remember for upcoming quiz and test is the formula is over of equals percent over 100. Okay. Is over of equals percent over 100. You're going to need to know that. So the first two types of problems that we're going to look at have a missing part. Have a missing part. So again, we're thinking of that is over of equals percent over 100. So to start out, I'm going to set up my proportion. Two fractions set equal to each other. I know the denominator of the second fraction is always going to be that number 100. That is not ever going to change. Okay. So, looking at the information I have, the first number that I see is my 15%. So that 15 is going to go in the percent spot up above the number 100. Okay. Because we're writing it as a fraction over 100, okay, we do not change that percent to a decimal. Okay, we don't change the percent to a decimal. We're writing it in a fraction form instead, which is that decimal equivalent. And then I see of 23. So that 23, is that going to go in the numerator or in the denominator? Okay, it's is over of. So 23 is of, okay, it's what is. So that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to put my variable there. You can choose any variable. So I've set up a proportion. How do I solve a proportion? Okay. We cross multiply. So when I cross multiply in one direction, I get 100x equals. Cross multiplying in the other direction, I get 23 times 15. Which is 345. Then what would I do to solve the equation? Divide both sides by 100. So x equals 3.45. Next problem. Again, I'm going to start by setting up my proportion form. So I can plug in what I know. So I see that 215%. So 215 goes above the 100 of 44. So that 44 goes in the denominator. I am looking for the is in the numerator. So I've got my proportion set up. So I cross multiply 100x equals 44 times 215, 9,460. So then, just like the previous problem, I divide by 100. So x is 94.6. So those two are examples where we were finding the missing part that is part of the formula. With these next two examples, we are going to be looking for the percent. So again, I'm going to start by setting up my proportion form and then plugging in what we have. So we know we're looking for the percent. I'm going to use the variable p, but again, you can use any variable letter you want. I have of 200. So does that go in the numerator or the denominator? Denominator is 40. Is goes in the numerator. And then again, I'm ready to cross multiply. 40 times 100 is 4,000 equals 200p. And then I want the variable by itself. So I'm going to divide by 200. I can do that without a calculator because I can cross off an equal number of zeros. So 40 divided by 2 is 20. Okay, that's a percent, so I need to make sure I write it with my percent sign. 20%. Next example, again, I set up my form. I know I'm looking for percent of 40, so 40 goes in the denominator, is 200. 200 goes in the numerator. So if you look at these two problems, they're both using the numbers 40 and 200, but they've switched what position they're in. And we're going to see that we come out with a completely different answer. So that's why it's very important that you think and know that formula so you get your numbers in the right spot. So when I cross multiply one direction, I get 20,000 equals 40p. So then I'm going to divide both sides by 40. And find that P is equal to 500%. So big difference between 20% and 500%. So very important that we know that formula, we get those numbers plugged into the correct spots. And then the last pair of problems are a missing whole. So again, I'm going to set up my form. This one says 25 is, so that goes in the numerator, 40%, so 40 above my 100. I'm looking for the whole. Again, I can put whatever variable I want. So I'm going to cross multiply 2,500 equals 40x. And then I will divide both sides by 40. 2,500 divided by 40 is 62.5. So whatever answer you're coming up with, we need to write that entire answer. We're not doing any rounding as we work with these. So 62.5. And then our last one, we have 88 is, so that's in the numerator, 122%. So the 122 goes over the 100. And then I'm ready to cross multiply. 8,800 equals 122x. So then I'm going to divide both sides by 122. This time you're going to see that you do not get an ending decimal. Okay. So we are going to have to round. You will be given directions on where to round if you're going to have situations like that. So we're going to round to the nearest thousandth. Nearest thousandth is how many numbers after the decimal? Three. Okay. So when I look at this, okay, I have 72.131114 and it keeps going. I'm going to round to the nearest thousandth, third number, which means I have to look at the fourth number. It's less than 5, so I'm just going to drop it off. So again, need to make sure that we round to the place that it tells us to if we need to do any rounding for our answers. So we're working with percentages. We're still setting up proportions, which means we do that cross multiplication to solve the proportion.